So this video actually started out as a top 3 list, but I wasn't able to keep it to just 3, so I added 2 more. This list is going to be focusing on everyday all-around distros for you, your business, or maybe someone you know. Consider this a list of recommendations, if you will. And since intros suck, let's just dive straight into the distros. Pop! OS is first on the list because it runs the gambit between seasoned Linux users and non-technical Linux users, gamers, and programmers. The biggest gripe I've seen against Pop is its usage of the GNOME desktop, which I tend to agree with. GNOME is not for everyone, and it can be a bit of a resource hog. Pop! OS is, however, my first choice because it has the sanest defaults of all of the Linux distros I've ever used. So many great and useful apps and libs are installed and configured right out of the box, so you don't have to waste time making sure stupid things like eSync is enabled for games. That being said, GNOME does have a bit of a learning curve for new users, and like I said about resources, you wouldn't want to install Pop on low-spec hardware. For that, you would want to install UbuntuMATE, which is next on the list. UbuntuMATE is a fantastic and possibly underrated Ubuntu flavor which focuses on being lightweight and compatible for a variety of different hardware setups. You can install UbuntuMATE on almost anything, and with system resource requirements like these, you could probably get it running on a literal potato. The desktop it uses is called Mate, and it's a spiritual continuation of GNOME 2, and it's flexible enough to be configured to look and feel like many desktops that you or someone you know is already familiar with. UbuntuMATE doesn't have super sane defaults like Pop, but since it's based on Ubuntu, all your codecs and stuff will work right out of the box, and the software store is good enough that you can find anything else you need without much effort. But maybe you or your target user knows nothing about computers or technology, or perhaps they're school-aged kids just getting into software. In that case, I'd have to recommend Endless OS, which is probably the most underrated Linux distro out there. Based on its default selection of apps, I'd say that Endless is targeted towards kids or education institutions in general, but the distro is based around Flatpak and the file system is immutable. This means that it is quite literally impossible for the end user to screw up the system and make it unusable. The desktop is GNOME just like Pop! OS, but it has its very own style. For a user that has little experience with computers in general, it's very intuitive and has a pretty shallow learning curve. Endless OS is perfect for kids getting into computers, but I also think it's ideal for business environments since Endless requires practically no post-install configuration or even maintenance. It's just a really cool and innovative distro. Next on the list is Elementary OS, and I don't have a good intro line for it. It's not really aimed at new or advanced users, and honestly it doesn't really have as good a defaults as say Pop! OS has. But it does have a really incredible UX and branding, and that means a lot to people. It's difficult not to compare it to Mac OS when you look at it, but if you go into Elementary expecting it to behave like a Mac, you're going to be disappointed. It's extremely fast and lightweight, especially when compared to Pop or Endless running the GNOME desktop. It also has its very own app store and community where users can easily write new apps and upload them so that everybody that uses Elementary can download them. And last on the list, I wanted to include KDE Neon, which might seem like an odd one. KDE Neon is not a Linux distro, but it's more of a software project. It's technically based on Ubuntu, just like the rest of the distros on this list, but the underlying distro doesn't matter that much. KDE Neon and KDE in general is targeted towards Linux enthusiasts, I think, and people who just really like tweaking their desktop and making it work for them, rather than them working for their desktop. If you've never used a computer or Linux before, KDE is one of the last things I'd recommend because you'd get overwhelmed and probably completely bork your desktop faster than you could say, "What the hell did I just do?" But if you're bored of GNOME and GTK desktops and you've never tried the latest KDE goodness, KDE Neon is perfect for you. It doesn't have the sanest defaults, but I think that's the point. You set your desktop and your system how you want it. It's like the polar opposite to Elementary OS. Now the great thing about Linux is choice. There's something out there for everyone. And this is just a list of 5 Linux distros. Obviously there's dozens and dozens, possibly hundreds of different distros out there custom tailored to fit a specific need. And that's what makes Linux so damn awesome. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you want to support the channel, you can become a patron or tune in for the live streams here that I do every once in a while. I appreciate all your support, and thanks for watching. But the distro is based around Flatpak and the file system is immutable. This means that it is quite literally impossible for the end user to screw up the system and make it unusable.